Thank you for being here with us today. We're going to have an opportunity today to recognize some exceptional police work, cooperation. We're going to start off with a life-saving award, and then I'll kind of explain about our next award, which I think will tug at all of our heartstrings and show that we never give up. And a very difficult investigation, and as we go forward, I'll explain that more. But let's start off at first by having Officer Teresa Marshall please come up. And you can have your family come up too if you'd like. Come on up. It's a family affair here in the St. Paul Police Department, so we like to have family with us all the time. We gather here today to honor some remarkable individuals for their actions. Officer Teresa Marshall is going to receive a life-saving award, and I will read from the citation. Officer Teresa Marshall is being recognized today for her actions on November 11th, 2011, in saving the life of a woman who wasn't breathing. Officer Marshall responded to a person not breathing call. She arrived and found a woman lying on a bed. The woman was foaming at the mouth, did not have a pulse, and was not breathing. Officer Marshall was able to get the woman to the floor where she began to perform chest compressions on the woman until the paramedics arrived. Once the medics arrived, they took over the CPR and were able to get a pulse. The woman survived and was treated at Regions. Officer Marshall's quick actions helped save this person's life. And more than that, it just shows the spirit of our officers of not giving up. Officer Marshall didn't just wait for the medics. She actually took action. She made sure to use her training to give CPR to someone to save one of our citizens who lives in St. Paul, their life, but not just their life, also to make sure that their family members have a loved one that's still there with them today. And with that, it gives me great, great pleasure to present Teresa with this life-saving award, and let's give her a loud round of applause.
All right, I'm not much of a public speaker, as most of you know. I just love the city. I love my job. I love what I do. I love coming here every day. But I could not do it without the support of my family and friends. I just want to thank all of you that are here, and I love working with y'all. Thanks.
I wanted to mention that Mayor Coleman couldn't be here with us today, but he has written letters up for all of the award winners today because he really understands the fine work and teamwork of the St. Paul Police Department and also our federal partners. And just to kind of let you know what we're going to do next, I'd like to have the following people come up, and after you receive your awards, you're going to have an opportunity to say a few words to all of our friends that are here. But please don't leave, because we're going to take a group photograph when we're done. So you get to stand up here the whole time with me, so that's the hard part. But I just want to let people know that as we take a look at this next award, we're going to recognize people from not only the St. Paul Police Department, but our federal partners from the FBI, who we work very closely with, and the United States Attorney's Office. We're going to talk about a triple homicide that occurred on March 23rd in 2007. One of the most tragic incidents we've ever had, I would dare say, in the history of our city. Something that shocked all of our conscience, something that hurt all of us in our heart. I know, because I was at that scene. But I didn't have the opportunity to do the work that the people did to bring these perpetrators and suspects to justice. It took a long time, it took a lot of hard work, but it took cooperation and a never I will give up attitude. And that's why I'm so proud of these individuals. You can understand that the families of these victims, the 3 victims that died that day, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how that hurt their heart, losing a loved one, and then having to work and to hear and wait to see when we were going to bring people to justice. Took a long time, but again, the dedication, the partnership, and the work you will hear in these citations, simply second to none. I'm very proud of these individuals. Today we're going to recognize Sergeant Tom Bergren with the Medal of Commendation, Sergeant Jane Mead with the Medal of Commendation, Sergeant Shay Shackle with the Medal of Commendation, retired Sergeant Tom Dinasty, who could not be with us today, with the Medal of Commendation, retired Sergeant Jane Laurence with the Medal of Commendation, Officer Rob Merrill with the Medal of Commendation, FBI Agent Matthew Parker with the Chief's Award, United States Attorney's Office Assistant Attorney Jeff Paulsen with the Chief's Award, and also Assistant United States Attorney Chris Wilson with the Chief's Award. We're going to start off with having Sergeant Tom Bergren please come up, Sergeant Jane Mead, and Officer Rob Merrill, if you can come up front, please. On March 23, 2007, 3 people, including a 15-year-old child, were murdered during a home invasion in St. Paul. 2 younger children witnessed the shooting death of their mother, sister, and their mother's boyfriend. This was a crime of unthinkable horror and took over 4 years for us to resolve. 2 men who at the time of their convictions were serving time for other murders received the maximum penalty of life in prison for the 3 murders. Their convictions were due to the hard work and dedication of many people who selflessly devoted many hours to bring justice to the families of those who were murdered. Sergeant Thomas Bergman was the lead homicide investigator in this case and worked closely with the FBI. But I can tell you that Bergie, as we affectionately know him as, did a lot more than that. He was a link to the family. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but he never gave up. He was a glue that held this investigation together. When others may have thought about maybe, you know what, we're not ever going to be able to charge or get a conviction because of threats, intimidation, and just who these suspects were, they were really bad people, Bergie never gave up. And he also made sure to instill that attitude with all of our partners and the other people that are standing here in front of you today. He worked along with Sergeant Jane Mead, and Jane's another person that never gives up. She's tenacious. She's worked on many cases, especially as a liaison when she worked with their FBI task force. Jane's got a can-do attitude that helped to solve this case. Retired Sergeant Tom Dunaski, who couldn't be with us today, and Officer Rob Merrill, who were on the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force when the murders took place. They continued to push forward despite the fact that information was slow to come, and again, witnesses were hesitant to cooperate. Now, I just want to bring you back to that time and remember who these 2 suspects were, because we knew they were tied to other crimes, other homicides. They'd intimidated witnesses before. This wasn't the first time. People were afraid of these individuals, but these 3 really put things together to make sure that we could get convictions in this case. In 2010, the case was indicted by a federal grand jury. That's why we're here today. And with that, first off, I want to give a Medal of Commendation to Sergeant Tom Bergren. Let's give him a loud round of applause. Nothing? I just want to let you know this is Tom's 4th Medal of Commendation, so that shows you the tenacity I talked about a little bit ago. Tommy?
Thank you. I would just like to say that this was really a true team effort between all members of the St. Paul Police Department, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and many, many other organizations and police departments throughout not just the county, but also throughout the state and outstate. And we're all very happy to bring this to a positive conclusion. It doesn't take the pain away from the families, but we feel that we were able to do our part to at least bring somewhat of a satisfying end note to this tragedy. Thank you.
Could I have Sergeant Jane Mead please step forward? Jane, congratulations. This is Jane's 2nd award.
Thank you, everybody. I was told that I have to come up here and say something because Tom Dinasty could not be here, and he had to make sure he said something. So he thanks you as well. Thank you very much.
Officer Rob Merrill. Rob, congratulations. Thank you. This is Rob's 2nd Medal of Commendation as well. You want to turn around here and also take a picture?
I couldn't have said it any better than Tom and Jane, but what I do want to say is, you know, as a police officer, you always want to be part of a team that works on something that has meaning and you have an impact in society to try to make our life and our world a little better place. And given the circumstances here, I hope that we try to do a little bit of that in this case. So thank you, and I appreciate this.
Can I have Sergeant Shay Shackle come up, please, and join our group here? Sergeant Shackle and his crime lab team responded to the murder scene and collected hundreds and hundreds of pieces of evidence, and that's an understatement, with the work that they had to do that day. As a veteran manager, Sergeant Shackle had to be the strength for his unit to piece together what happened during the home invasion and be able to recreate for the courtroom the horrific murder scene. He examined dozens of fingerprints, analyzed evidence, and even retrieved the murder weapon from a sewer. Under immense pressure, he was able to provide testimony that was crucial in prosecuting the two suspects. But off the script, Sergeant Shackle was on that stand for 4 hours, giving testimony, being re-examined. And I can tell you that Shay has been with our crime lab for a long time. There is nobody better. He's top-notch. Under tremendous pressure, he didn't crack. He was to the point. In fact, as chief of police, I heard from prosecutors and others what an exceptional job he did in presenting evidence in one of the most horrific tragedies that we've had in our city. With that, I am more than proud to give and award Sergeant Shackle with a Medal of Commendation, and let's give Shay a loud round of applause.
Well, it really was a team. I can't thank enough current lab members, former lab members, interns that help out on a daily basis. You know, when you start the job and you do the interview process, one of the questions is say, why do you want to become a cop? You say, I want to help people. That's a common answer. Then reality hits after you've been there for a few years, but in this case, you're actually able to help people, bring some closure to the family, and without all the work of everybody on the department, that would have never happened. Thank you.
Can I please have retired Sergeant Jane Laurence please step up? You notice our group is expanding here. We're going to run out of room. Probably have to go around here. As an investigator and analyst, retired Sergeant Jane Laurence was able to provide crucial testimony during this trial. Her analysis of the telephone calls made on the day of the murder and the locations of the cell towers used for those calls identified a core group of suspects. This was critical to this case, including the two defendants. She was able to show that those two men were indeed at the crime scene. Retired Sergeant Laurence was also involved with drafting search warrants and continued to assist in the investigation after her retirement. So after Jane left, she still, and by the way, Jane and I go back a long way, working different assignments together, and it shows the commitment. Jane continued to work with all of our people, be in constant contact with them, because we knew we had to bring these people to justice. I'm just so proud of the things that everybody's done, and with Jane being retired and still helping our organization, and it gives me great pleasure to award her a Medal of Commendation. Let's give her a loud round of applause.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not very loud. Thank you to all of you for being here. And as the Chief mentioned, working on a case like this is a career opportunity. Being able to contribute to something like this was immensely satisfying to me, and to see it through to the end and to work with such great people here. I just want to also mention some other names of some people. This team is a good team, but by far we were not the only people working on this for the 4 years it took to bring it to justice. Dave Corris is here. He was a supervisor when it happened. of Special Investigations and stuck with the group of us through the whole thing, pushing for us, advocating. Nancy DePerna did a good job of clearing obstacles and giving us what we needed. Janet Dunham and Sandy Kennedy put Tavares Lindsay in prison on a different murder so that we could concentrate on this one and get him convicted on it. John Pica brought a lot of information in. Jeremy Ellison and Eric Vang Sitzler worked on the phone end of it with me through all of it. Jeff Winger, Tim McCarty, Kevin Moore, Trish England contributed a huge amount of intelligence and information about this gang. Tom Arnold, Mike Reavers were constantly running in the field, bringing people in as witnesses, leveraging people. Tim Bone and Tim Moore, and I can't list everybody that contributed, but I just want to let you know that we were not the only ones working on this for the 4 years. And thank you again.
Next, could I have a couple of our federal partners come up? FBI agent Matthew Parker, please, and also Assistant United States Attorney Chris Wilton. And just so you know, we're missing Assistant United States Attorney Jeff Paulsen. We'll make sure to get him his award. I think that Chris is going to accept the award for Jeff. Let me just say before I read from the citations here that we have an exceptional relationship in the St. Paul Police Department with our federal partners. And when we looked at this case, I would be remiss by saying that everybody in this room, every officer, every citizen, every person, it tugged at our heartstrings. And we had to become creative because these were two not only elusive, dangerous suspects, but we had to find a way to get past some obstacles to make sure to bring them to justice on this crime. That's why it took so long. Without our federal partners, both FBI Agent Parker and Assistant United States Attorney Wilton and Jeff Paulsen, this would not have happened. They work with our officers. They had countless meetings. I'm afraid to try to figure out how many times everybody met and talked about strategies about how to get this done. How do we close the loops? How do we close the gaps? And these two individuals are just exceptional people that helped all of our staff in the St. Paul Police Department, and we're forever in your debt, and we want to thank you for that. I'll now read from the citations. Matthew Parker was a primary case agent for the FBI. Mr. Parker participated in multiple search warrants in the weeks immediately following the murders. He opened a federal investigation and acted as a liaison with the United States Attorney's Office. He interviewed dozens of potential witnesses with an empathetic demeanor and also interviewed one of the suspects with our investigators. The third time he interviewed him, he was able to obtain a partial confession. Mr. Parker worked closely with our investigators throughout the case and also coordinated efforts when it became clear the case would be prosecuted federally. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to award Matthew with the Chiefs Award. Let's give him a loud round of applause, please.
Thank you, Chief. And I want to say thank you to the entire St. Paul Police family. St. Paul Police Department has been very good to me. I came over in 2005 to start working with St. Paul Police. And at that time, St. Paul Police were kind enough to give me two great mentors, Sergeants Mead and Dunaski. You couldn't ask for two better people to learn from. And at the time I got over there, the two of them were working with Officer Merrill on the murder of Officer Sackett. And I watched the way they handled themselves during that case. And what I learned from them during that time is that cases like this and like that are made based on personal relationships. Personal relationships with the people you work with, personal relationships with the prosecutors, personal relationships with your informants, with witnesses, and with the victim's family. And I saw that the relationship that Tom and Jane had developed with Jeanette Sackett. And when we got into our case, we did the same thing with the victim's family. And we got to know the victims' families. And through that, we got to know the victims in the case. We learned a lot about Mariah and Brittany and Otal. And what we learned about them and how we met their family is what inspired us to keep working on the case, even 3 and 4 years later when we weren't certain we were going to get there. In addition to giving me 2 great mentors, St. Paul Police have also given me 2 great partners. I've been working with Officer Merrill for a long time now, and on the case and many other cases, Sergeant Bergren and I worked together, and I couldn't ask for 2 better partners. And finally, as I said, St. Paul Police Department is a family. On this case and the other ones I've worked with a lot of units. I think SIU, Homicide, Narcotics, and all the people in the crime lab, in the property room. And even though I'm a Fed pretending to be a real cop, they all treated me like family and part of the St. Paul Police family. And I consider that a great honor, and I thank you.
Mr. Chris Wilton and Mr. Jeffrey Paulsen from the United States Attorney's Office were consulted by the FBI when it became clear this case may have a federal connection. They understood this was a difficult case and willingly committed United States Attorney's Office resources to assist with solving and prosecuting this crime. The talent, professionalism, and leadership they displayed, along with the recommendations they provided, were simply put invaluable. Their reputable character and complete dedication to alleviate the suffering of the victims' families were instrumental to the successful conviction of these 2 dangerous criminals. Mr. Wilton had the difficult task of working with one of the young witnesses to this brutal murder. The witness was only 10 years old at the time, and Mr. Wilton's experience in working with young witnesses was crucial and critical to this case. It gives me great pleasure to award these individuals with medals of commendations and Chiefs Awards, but before I'm getting ahead of my script here, I want to make sure that we give Mr. Chris Wilton a loud round of applause for his Chiefs Award that we're going to receive today.
Unlike Matt, I didn't bring a script. I've been a prosecutor for almost 20 years and have prosecuted murder cases and rape cases and all kinds of cases. I can tell you without a doubt that this was by far the most difficult case that I've ever prosecuted. You think about the March date at about 5 o'clock in the morning where these victims were sleeping soundly, and during a home invasion, each of these victims was executed. One was tortured, and while a female and her children laid face down, one of these individuals, one of these defendants, decided to come back in and put a gun to the back of their heads and kill them. Once Rashad Raleigh killed Mariah, he turned the gun on a 15-year-old little girl, put it in the back of her head, and executed her. There was no evidence taken from the crime scene. Shay, Shackle and his team did an amazing job. But these guys were smart, and they wore hoods, and they wore gloves, and they didn't leave any evidence. And yet, 4 years later, a federal jury sat, listened to evidence for 4 or 5 days, and after about 6 hours, came back and convicted both these individuals of all counts. And the only way that that gets done is by what you see right here. I can't tell you how many hours and days that this group put in. They interviewed probably 200 or 300 people over the course of 4 years. They tracked down, every time they came to a dead end, they kept tracking down leads over and over and over. And I can tell you, 3 years into the investigation, we were not close to indicting anyone. Sergeant Bergren kept pushing, though. He didn't stop. And this entire group didn't stop. And so when you get to work with people like this, it makes it worthwhile. It definitely humbles me to be in a group with this talent and with the talent that I see out in front of me. And when it comes down to it, we clearly don't do this job for the money that it's giving us. We don't do this job because it gives us a lot of time off, but we do this job for people like Beth and Greg and their families to bring closure. We can't bring these victims back, but what we can sure make sure of is that nobody else in St. Paul, that nobody else in Minnesota gets hurt from these two victims or from these two defendants. The work that these people do was nothing short of amazing. Poor Shackle got called to the witness stand 3 times during the same case. He was on the stand, like the chief said, for at least 4 hours. And yet, under withering cross-examination, he didn't blink twice. And it just goes to show you, in terms of dedication, he had 8 million things to do, and yet I could call him on a Saturday and say, hey, this is the new defense theory. Can you go back through all the thousands of pictures and find something that I can explain this away with? And I didn't hear, hey, it's Saturday, or I can't do this. I heard, I'll give you a call back when it's done. And that's what every one of these people did. And so, I appreciate this award, and I appreciate being in this group. Thank you very much.
It's difficult to describe the impact these individuals' work had on our department, the other agencies that were involved, the surviving children, other family members, and the friends of the victims in St. Paul community. I want us to remember, all of us in this room, that not only the victims that were taken from their family members, but most importantly, we should not forget the family members that are still here with us today that have to live with that. And as Chris said, and eloquently said, I hope that the work that all of these individuals and so many more did will give some closure to the family so that a healing process can begin. I only have one more thing here today, and then we'll take a picture together, but I think it is so relevant, and you'll understand in a second. At this time, I'd like to read a little from an email I received this past Tuesday from Beth Hill, the mother of Otel Sanders, one of the victims of the triple murder. It was written about Sergeant Tom Bergren, but applies to all that worked that case. And the email said, my name is Beth Hill. You may not recognize my name, but my son, Otel Sanders, his wife, Maria McClay, and daughter Brittany Kekadekis, were murdered in the North End triple homicide on Burgess Street in St. Paul on March 23, 2007. While our case lingered for many years, it was finally federally prosecuted in 2011, and 2 of the men responsible for the crime were recently found guilty. Most people will never experience a relationship between a homicide detective and a homicide survivor. I am one of the unlucky few. But as unlucky as I am to be a homicide survivor, I feel fortunate to have known Tom Bergren. When I arrived at the crime scene that fateful morning, Tom was the first law enforcement officer that I encountered. He was a homicide detective in charge, and I was the mother of one of the victims. A brief encounter, but one that I shall never forget. While he didn't share any of the details of the crime, I knew when I left that corner that my son and others had been murdered. I asked him to please find the people that did this awful thing. The crime was horrific, and the details of the crime were heart-wrenching. For more than 4 agonizing years, Tom showed my family respect, compassion, and care. He helped me through the unthinkable, and I'm not even sure he knows how much he helped me. He didn't judge my family. He just did what a great homicide cop would do. He never gave up on the investigation. There were many highs and lows in the investigation over those 4 years, but Tom remained vigilant and put his personal life on hold to help bring those responsible for this crime to justice. For that, I am forever grateful. Let's give all of these people a round of applause again. In closing, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to let you know these weren't matter-of-fact awards. I mean, it's kind of tough to give awards when you're talking about such a horrific situation where family members lost loved ones. But the good thing is, we never gave up. You heard from Ms. Hill, You heard from all the people that came up here. There are so many other people that are here that also helped in that investigation. I know that I'm proud, the mayor's proud, your community's proud, because you never gave up. With that, we have cake, we have coffee. We hope you'll stay, and also congratulate all the award winners, and thank you for coming this afternoon.